occasion robberies in a county of 91,000 in a year, one a month, doesn't sound like a lot.
It's a fair question.
Roger?
I have one final question about federal resources. We talked in the first panel about the possibility that if Prop 19 passes, then the federal government will shut off law enforcement support. And I was wondering about your concerns in that regard.
Panelists?
Right. The 11 home invasions, it's very important to understand those are reported home invasions, and we truly believe that about 10% of home invasions are reported to us because other people aren't reporting because they think we're going to come in and, you know, kick the doors and take their marijuana. And so those are the 11 that we did get, and it's very important for my citizenry to know that we want them to report, and they are the true victims of crimes, and that's the reason that we are seeing an increase of reported, because they're seeing a trust with the sheriff's office. As far as the federal resources, I don't know. It's important that we have a relationship with DEA, because I don't want DEA coming into my county without allowing me to have a representative from my sheriff's office go with them on their raids, so if something happens, I have a local county employee who can tell me what happened, and that's very important to me, because I've had many citizens say, well, why don't you just ignore DEA and let them do their own thing? And so it's very important, that relationship. As far as the funding goes, I don't know what's going to happen. I know that there is a huge impact on public lands with marijuana right now. And you're going to see a huge response from the Sheriff's Office on public lands. What I've done is I've real quickly given our deputies 7 enforcement objectives to enforce. Every one of their search warrants has to meet one of these criteria. Federal or public lands, any trespass grows on large tracts of land, any marijuana grows where there's illegal water diversion, any marijuana growing where there's environmental degradation, any type of nuisance complaint where we're going to come in. Any type, we offer compliance checks for people if you're growing marijuana because the laws are so confusing. We will come to your house, we'll look at your marijuana, we'll say yes, you're in compliance, or no, you're not, and if you're not in compliance, this is how you should be in compliance, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. So we're trying to work with these things to make out the problem, and I'm explaining to the DEA as we're going along, so it's not a big surprise to them. And I'm sorry, there was one other question.
Just if you could comment on the...
Joy Greenfield. Joy Greenfield did. She was our very first person that purchased zip ties. What a zip tie is it's a zip tie that has an individual serial number on it. I have one here from last year that identifies that marijuana plant as a medical marijuana plant from a recommended doctor. And pretend the zip tie acts like a prescription bottle. So when our deputies go and investigate it, in 5 minutes they can investigate it instead of 2 hours calling the doctor and so forth. Joy Greenfield did have the zip ties, and there was the DEA that went there, and the only thing I can say, and I think this is very important before we presume that the DEA was wrong on this, it's a sealed affidavit, and let's wait until the affidavit is unsealed to see if there's things in there we don't know about, because I'm sure there's things in there we don't know about, and I'm not going to stick up for Joy or say she's guilty until I know what's in that sealed affidavit.
Just very briefly, for the question regarding tweaking Prop 19, the legislature ability in that regard will be very limited because the California Constitution forbids the legislature from amending, modifying, or even clarifying a voter-approved initiative. So that's going to be an issue. And I'll just conclude, if Prop 19 does pass, lawyers like me, and I include criminal defense lawyers, will be referring to it as the Full-Time Employment Act.
Prop 19 allows it to be tweaked. It's written into the initiative to allow the legislature.
Unless the initiative expressly allows for it.
You haven't even read it, have you?
Thank you for clarifying that, Richard.
Richard's clarification was important because in the ballot argument and within the language of the initiative, which is good because what the woman said is totally right. I mean, every piece of legislation is a work in progress, and we've already morphed it, given some input. And you know, the more people you have at the table, particularly like the sheriff, the better and stronger, and the more watertight the bill's going to be. And the process up there is making sausage. So what you start with is not always what you finish with, but with the leverage of the initiative being the law of the land, and by making your initial foray as expansive as possible, you can compensate for any tweaking. And some of the tweaks could be a positive thing, not a negative thing. So.
And then just to quickly add, are allowed as long as it furthers the purposes of the initiative. So legislative amendments can't then take away provisions or something that Prop 19 grants to Californians. So they can amend it to help, facilitate implementation of it, but they can't amend it to then say, we're now imposing more criminal penalties and possession of constitution.
Richard, since you're in the audience, would you like to make a few remarks? I'd be happy to pass